In this video, we'll discuss dataset artifacts, and we'll build a source and target dataset that we'll later use inside of our map. Datasets define data connectivity information needed to read and write data from our source or target. We will now create a source dataset that connects to a flat file of some order data that we have. Working inside of our customer's repository, inside of our P01 Acme Company project, we'll add a dataset. Again, from the Add pull-down menu, we'll select Dataset. We'll name this artifact DS for dataset underscore src source orders ASCII, giving some additional descriptive information about the source that we're connecting to. At this point, we need to specify this dataset type to be a source or a target. In this case, we'll be connecting to our source. Select Source from the pull-down menu and open our Source Dataset Designer. From the pull-down list of connectors,
we'll select the ASCII delimited connector for our flat file source data. Once we select the appropriate connector, we need to start our session with that connector. We can now browse out to the particular file that we're trying to connect to. We'll select Browse, and we can navigate inside of our sample repository. The file that we're looking for here is named source orders.txt. We'll select that file, and you'll notice the path has been returned inside of our source dataset. This section here contains the connection properties for the ASCII delimited connector. In this case, we know that our orders file has a header, so we'll toggle the header property from false to true, and then establish connection to our source orders.txt file with the following connection properties. From the console below, we get a preview of the data once it's connected to our source file. If we wanted to browse the entire data in our source file, we could select the magnifying glass or the data browser. Notice a separate tab for the data browser is open, and by default, we're looking at 50 records per page. We could change the view and view 100 records per page, or toggle through all of our data. At this point, we can browse the entire source data set. When we're finished browsing the data, we can simply close the data browser and return back to our source data set. We need to make sure to save the changes to our source data set at this point by selecting the diskette icon in the upper left corner. Once we've successfully saved our source dataset, we can now close out that source dataset tab and return to the Design Manager. You'll now notice that our source orders ASCII dataset is now saved as an artifact inside of our P01 Acme Company project. We'll now add our target dataset to that same project. So again, from the Add pull-down menu, we'll select Dataset. We'll name our artifact for our target, DS for dataset, underscore TRG for target, and then a descriptive name. In this case, we're going to be writing to our orders table inside of our database. We want to make sure that we select our dataset type to be a target at this point, and now we can open our dataset designer. This target dataset will connect to our MySQL database. From the connector list, we'll use the ODBC 3.x connector. And we'll specify our data source as our SQL database. Once we've selected our data source, we can start our session. Notice that 6 tables from our database have been loaded, and we can now specify
that particular table or view that we want to use for our target. From our pull-down list, we'll select our orders table. And we could select replace or append from our output mode. We'll now establish a connection to our orders table inside of our MySQL database. Once we've established connection to it, successfully return the schema from our orders table. Now we want to make sure that we save our target data set. And once we successfully save that data set to our design repository, we can exit or close out of our target data set.